When my daughter's husband forged my signature to sell my cabin, I didn't call the police. I called my lawyer, and what I did next made them lose everything in one ruthless move. Before we dive deeper, don't forget to subscribe and drop a comment letting us know where you're tuning in from. I was fixing a leak under the kitchen sink when the call came. The compression nut had loosened again, an annoying little drip that had stained the inside of the cabinet. I was on my back, flashlight in my teeth, wrench in hand, water pooling near my left shoulder, when my phone buzzed on the counter. I didn't check it right away. At 70, you learn to prioritize the small victories, fixing something with your hands, finishing a task. But when I finally crawled out from under the sink and wiped my hands on a rag, I saw the name flash across the screen. Rebecca. My only daughter. The light of her mother's life, and mine too, for a time. I answered with a small smile. "Hey, kiddo." Her voice was calm. Too calm. Like someone preparing to drop bad news in gift wrap. "Dad, just wanted to let you know the cabin's sold. We got a great offer, full cash." I dropped the wrench. "The cabin?" I asked, though I already knew. "The cabin on Stillwater Lake. My retreat. My late wife's favorite place in the world. The one I built with my own hands in 1989 and never once considered listing for sale." A pause followed, not the kind that means confusion, but the kind that means the speaker knows exactly what they said, and they're waiting for you to catch up. "Yeah," she finally said, like she was talking about an old chair we agreed to toss out. "We figured it didn't make sense for it to sit empty all the time. Mike said you'd already signed the papers." Mike. My son-in-law. Tall, polished, always with perfect hair and teeth and not a single callus on his hands. A man who wears tailored suits and cologne that costs more than my entire monthly pension. The kind of man who calls hard work manual labor, with the same tone most folks reserve for infestations. I never trusted him, not from the moment I first shook his damp, flimsy hand, and now I knew why. "I never signed anything," I said slowly. The silence on her end stretched just a little too long. Rebecca was always the more composed one, even as a child. I remember once, when she was 8, she found a bird with a broken wing in the backyard. Most kids would cry. She didn't. She just knelt down, whispered softly to it, and brought it to me wrapped in a towel. I thought it meant she was strong. Now I know it meant she learned early how to tuck her emotions behind tidy words and quiet tones. When her mother got sick, lung cancer, stage 4, Rebecca was in her second year of law school. She came home, of course, but only for the weekends. Always dressed for a meeting, always on a call. I told myself she was busy, trying to juggle everything. But my wife, Marie, saw it differently. "She's already moving on," Marie said once, not unkindly. "She doesn't know how to sit still with pain. She'll bury it in tasks, in people. In the wrong man." And she did. Mike showed up just 2 months after the funeral. Shiny shoes, shiny watch, slick hair. He introduced himself like he was sealing a deal. By their second Christmas together, he'd proposed, ring, wine, fireworks, the works. I kept my thoughts to myself, mostly. Marie always said not to interfere, that Rebecca had to find her own way. But when they bought that 5-bedroom monstrosity in Oak Hill and asked me to invest in the down payment, I started to see the outlines of something I didn't like. I said yes, of course. Just like I said yes when they needed help covering Alexa's private preschool. And yes again when Mike's startup collapsed and they needed help covering the mortgage for a few months, which turned into 10. Not once did I make a fuss. Not once did I pull out the ledger and say, "This is what you owe me." Because that's not what fathers do. But this? Selling the cabin. That was different. The cabin wasn't just property. It was where Marie and I went when the chemo got too rough. Where we spent our last real weekend together, bundled in blankets, drinking coffee on the porch while the lake froze over in slow, beautiful silence. It was where Rebecca learned to fish. Where she fell out of a tree and broke her wrist at 10, and laughed through the pain like a daredevil. Where we built snowmen in March and grilled trout in July and scattered Marie's ashes one quiet morning 2 winters ago. And now they'd sold it. Behind my back. Using my name. My grip tightened around the phone. I never signed anything, I repeated, quieter this time, but sharper. Rebecca cleared her throat. Oh. Mike said, maybe there was a mix-up. The paperwork had your signature already. He said it was all handled. Maybe you forgot. Maybe I forgot. The man I paid to go to rehab when he wrecked their Lexus. The man who calls me, sir, only when he wants something. Dad, she said, when I didn't answer. I'll call you back, I said, and hung up. Then I stood in my silent kitchen, the drip under the sink forgotten, and listened to the house around me. The same house Marie and I raised Rebecca in. The same one I never left, even after it got quiet, even after the photos on the wall became more memory than decoration. And in that silence, something shifted in my chest. Something cold. Something sharp. They thought they could do this. That I wouldn't notice. That I wouldn't fight. But they had forgotten one thing. I may be old. I may be quiet. But I built that cabin with my bare hands, and I still know how to use them. The phone felt heavier in my hand than it had 5 minutes ago. Not because of the call, but because of everything that call meant. I stared out the kitchen window at the backyard Marie once filled with raised flower beds. All of them gone now, taken over by weeds and time. She used to stand at that very sink, humming, while she washed blueberries and watched Rebecca play with her toy sailboat in the inflatable pool. I grabbed my coat. It was still early afternoon, but the sky had that overcast look that said night might come early. The keys to the truck were in the drawer, same place they'd always been. Stillwater Lake was 2 hours and change north, tucked into the woods near Brainerd. I'd made the drive hundreds of times. Knew every curve, every gas station, every diner that still served pie by the slice. But that day, the road looked different. Not because of the scenery, but because of what I knew waited for me at the end. I pulled onto the highway and let the engine hum. A light rain had started, soft but steady. I kept my eyes on the horizon, my knuckles tight on the wheel. And that's when the memories started to come. Marie was standing barefoot on the unfinished deck of the cabin, laughing as I tried to swat away a mosquito with a 2x4. Her hair was tied up in a red bandana, her face flushed from the July heat. We didn't have electricity yet, just lanterns and a cooler full of sandwich fixings. We'll finish this deck, she said, then we're jumping in that lake whether it's ready for us or not. We did. Clothes and all. The water was freezing, and we screamed like kids. That was the first night we made love at the cabin, on a mattress still wrapped in plastic, under a sky so clear you could count satellites. Few years had passed. Rebecca was 11. She'd asked for snow boots like the ones I wore, real ones, not pink. Marie found a pair at a second-hand store and wrapped them in 3 boxes, each one bigger than the last. When Rebecca opened them, her face lit up like the cabin itself had turned into a lighthouse. She wore them the whole day, even to dinner. That night, I taught her how to build a fire, not just light one, but build it. Stack it so it lasts. Feed it without choking it. Someday, I told her, you'll have this place for your own kids. And she'd hugged me. Tight. I pulled off at a gas station near Baxter, more out of habit than necessity. The rain was steady now, the kind that turned gravel roads to muck and made every pine branch droop like a bowed head. I bought coffee, burnt, bitter, but hot, and a pack of gum. The cashier was a kid, probably 16, more focused on his phone than me. When I stepped back outside, the wind hit hard. I leaned on the truck for a moment, staring at the trees lining the back edge of the parking lot. Somewhere behind those trees, not 15 miles from where I stood, sat the cabin. Or at least it had. Now it sat in someone else's hands, if the papers were to be believed. And then Mike happened. He'd brought a bottle of wine that cost more than my power bill and spent most of dinner explaining why I should refinance the cabin to maximize its passive yield. I didn't bother asking what he meant. Men like him use words like fences, to keep you out, not to invite you in. Real estate's hot right now, he'd said. You could sell that lake spot for a mint, move into a nice senior community, and still have cash to burn. I told him I'd rather be buried under the deck than sell the place. He laughed. Rebecca didn't. She just smiled politely and said, Mike likes to think in terms of options. Options. Like memories are just assets to be liquidated. I finished the coffee in 2 gulps and climbed back into the truck. Rain pelted the windshield now. The wipers screeched once, twice, and settled into their rhythm. 15 miles to go. I didn't speed. I didn't rush. This wasn't a rescue mission. It was reconnaissance. I needed to see it with my own eyes, the locks, the sign, the fingerprints they'd left behind. Because the truth wasn't in the paperwork. It was in the details. The door. The porch. The lights. I turned off the highway onto the county road. The gravel crunched beneath the tires, wet and familiar. The trees closed in, tall and old. Marie always said this stretch felt like a cathedral. Then the driveway came into view, narrow, overgrown, winding. And there it was. The cabin. Just as I left it, and not. The "for sale" sign was gone. A newer sign stood in its place, sold, pending transfer. The kind of sign you put up after signatures are inked, when you're sure no one's going to fight you. The porch light was on. That hurt more than I expected. I parked, climbed out, and stood in the rain, staring up at the home I had built board by board. The wind carried the scent of pine and wet cedar. The steps creaked just like they always had. I walked up, slowly, and tried the door. Locked. Different lock. Figures. I turned back toward the driveway and sat on the edge of the porch swing. It groaned beneath my weight, the same way it had the night Marie told me she was ready to stop treatment. And just like that, another memory came rushing in. I don't want to fight anymore, Marie said quietly, her head resting against my shoulder. I want peace. Here. With you. We'd come up for one last weekend. She was too weak to chop wood, so I did it alone while she watched from the swing, wrapped in 4 blankets, smiling through the pain. This place, she whispered. Promise me it'll always be ours. I did. With everything in me, I did. And now Mike, that snake, had sold it from under me, forging my name to make a buck. But he made one mistake. He forgot that while I may look like an old man, I built this cabin. And I still know how to tear it all down. I sat on that porch swing for nearly an hour. Rain dripped from the eaves in steady taps. The lake, just beyond the tree line, rippled under gray skies. I could hear a loon's call in the distance, mournful, low, like the woods themselves were disappointed in what had been done. Eventually, headlights cut through the mist. A black Range Rover pulled into the gravel drive like it owned the place. It stopped halfway up, and the engine purred before falling silent. The driver's door opened. Mike. Wearing a quarter-zip pullover, slacks, loafers. Casual, but calculated. Even now, he looked like he was late for a golf appointment. He stepped out, umbrella in hand, and saw me sitting there. His mouth twitched, not quite a smile, not quite a sneer. Well, he said, climbing the steps. Didn't expect to see you up here. I didn't move. Didn't expect to find strangers locking my door. He tilted his head, the way people do when they're pretending to be reasonable. Not strangers. We're family, Mark. You forged my signature. Mike let out a sigh, as if I had just said something disappointingly naive. Look, let's not do this in the rain. Rebecca will be here in 15 minutes. We can talk inside. He pulled a key from his pocket and opened the door. His key. To my cabin. I stood. Leave the door open, I said. He glanced back, surprised, but obeyed. Inside, he moved with practiced ease, set the umbrella near the wall, slipped off his shoes, checked his phone. I followed, noting the details. The kitchen counter now had a fruit bowl. A stack of real estate brochures. One of those Himalayan salt lamps that glows for no good reason. They had already started making themselves at home. You should have called first, Mike said, pouring himself a glass of water. I could have walked you through everything. I don't need a walkthrough of my own cabin. It's not, he stopped, smiled thinly. It's in transition. I stepped toward the kitchen. Let me guess. You found a buyer through one of your old finance buddies. Some cash offer. Fast. Clean. No appraisals. He didn't deny it. Opportunity like that doesn't wait. The market's cooling fast. You don't own this cabin. I do now, he said. Calm. Unflinching. Your name's on the trust, sure, but you gave Rebecca co-executive privileges 5 years ago, remember? You both needed to sign, and, well, now you have. He walked over to a folder on the table and opened it. You see that? He pointed to the signature on the last page. Yours. Looks pretty good to me. I stared at it. It was close. Close enough to fool a glance. But not close enough for me. You practiced, I said quietly. Mike laughed. I used to forge my dad's initials for field trip slips. This was just more expensive. He didn't flinch when he said it. Didn't even seem embarrassed. In fact, he looked proud. Like he had finally outmaneuvered me in a game he thought I didn't know we were playing. And that was the moment it shifted. Not just what I thought about Mike. But what I realized about Rebecca. She knew. She had to know. He wasn't clever enough to pull this off alone. She must have let him in on the trust details, showed him the documents, maybe even stood there when he signed my name. They'd sold the place for a clean $500,000, I'd later learn. Enough to pay off their debt, wipe Mike's name off several loan defaults, and tuck some into an account for Alexa's future. And all it cost was one man's memories and one forged name. I sat at the table. You know this is a felony, I said. Mike sat too, across from me. No judge is going to charge a family man trying to manage his father-in-law's estate for the benefit of his granddaughter. You're old. You're, what's the phrase? Mentally ambiguous. That stung. Not because it was new, but because I had heard a version of that from Rebecca once, not long after Marie died. Maybe, she'd said gently, it's time you let us help handle things, Dad. You forget dates. You left the stove on. We're just worried. Now I saw it for what it was. Laying the groundwork. Mike leaned back. Let me give you a suggestion. Take the high road. We cut you a check, say $50,000. No fuss. No court. You get the satisfaction of knowing your legacy helped Alexa. You're bribing me. I'm solving a problem. We sat in silence for a beat. The only sound was the rain against the roof. Then I heard a car door slam. Rebecca. I didn't turn. I just waited. Her footsteps on the porch. The click of the door opening. Dad, she called, cautious. In here, I said. She appeared in the doorway, soaked to the shoulders, her coat clinging to her. She looked older than I remembered. Tired. Mike, I told you not to bring him up here until everything was finalized, she hissed. Relax, he said. We're having a civilized conversation. She looked at me then. Really looked. And for the first time in years, I didn't see my little girl. I saw someone calculating the odds. Dad, she said softly, please. This doesn't have to be ugly. We needed the money. Mike's firm is restructuring, and I'm drowning with Alexa's school. Don't use your daughter to defend this, I snapped. You could have come to me. You should have. We didn't think you'd say yes, she said. That hurt worse than anything else so far. Because it meant she didn't trust me. She trusted him. And now I knew just how far they were willing to go. I drove home through the storm in silence. Not because I had nothing to say, but because I knew, if I let any sound come out of my mouth, it would be a roar. I did not call them again. I did not respond to Rebecca's apologetic text later that night. We didn't want to hurt you, Dad. Please don't do anything rash. We're family. They had already made their move. Now it was time for mine. At the next morning, I called Craig Weston. Craig had been my lawyer for 2 decades, a quiet, steady man who wore corduroy jackets even in summer and still printed every email because he did not trust clouds that didn't carry rain. Mark, he said, picking up on the second ring. To what do I owe the pleasure? They forged my name on a property transfer. The Stillwater cabin. He paused. Not shocked. Just quiet. Rebecca and her husband. Yes. And you're sure it's a forged signature? They made it close. But it's not mine. I built that cabin. I know every line, even in my pen strokes. Craig let out a low whistle. All right. Let's talk war. By noon, I was in his office with every document I had, originals and copies, stored in a leather binder Marie had given me for Christmas 15 years ago. We reviewed everything. The trust agreement from 2004. The title, which remained legally under the trust's name. The clause that specifically required dual approval, from me and Rebecca, for any sale of trust property. But most important, the clause I had forgotten about, tucked deep in the small print of page 6. All approvals must be given in person, in writing, and notarized. Electronic or scanned submissions shall be deemed non-binding. I stared at that sentence like it was a loaded gun. They didn't get anything notarized, I said. Craig nodded. And that means the transfer isn't just forged. It's invalid. And the title office missed it. What now? We file a cease and desist with the county clerk and the title company. We freeze the transaction, the buyer's escrow won't go through with an active dispute. Then we file a criminal complaint for forgery, and a civil suit for damages. I sat back. And we do it quietly, I added. He raised an eyebrow. Quietly. I nodded. Let them think I'm walking away. Let them believe I'm licking my wounds. You want the element of surprise. I want them to taste what betrayal feels like before the lawyers show up. Within 48 hours, everything was in motion. The title office froze the sale. The county clerk filed an injunction, citing trust conflict. The buyer, a man named Grant Ellison, an out-of-state investor, was furious. His lawyer called Mike personally and demanded an explanation. Mike, in his arrogance, tried to bluff. They're just delaying it. The old man's confused. Bad move. Because Craig had already submitted the forensic analysis, a handwriting expert we hired within a day confirmed that the signature was not mine. Not even close. Then came the felony complaint. Forgery. Fraud. Attempted illegal transfer of trust assets. Violating the notarization clause. Mike and Rebecca were served at their doorstep on a Thursday morning. I heard from a friend who works the county records that the moment the papers hit his hand, Mike looked like someone had poured bleach into his bloodstream. But that wasn't the best part. The best part was the escrow agent, who had been blindsided. Because once a transaction is frozen for legal reasons, the escrow company has to report the entire situation to the buyer and their legal team, and their fraud department. They launched an internal investigation. And the moment they did, Mike's name, phone number, and a list of prior disputes were flagged. 2 other real estate deals from years past where documents had gone missing or accidentally changed. The buyer pulled out. The deal collapsed. The fraud report was filed. And the cabin? It stayed mine. But the damage was just beginning, for them. Mike tried to bluff his way out of court. Tried to settle for a few thousand. Then tried to claim he was managing the trust as a favor to me, and that I had simply forgotten authorizing the sale. Craig smiled and handed him a notarized affidavit, signed 5 years earlier, in which I declared all transactions required my in-person approval, and listed Mike by name as having no legal authority or role in the management of this trust. Rebecca stayed silent through most of it. Until the civil suit was filed. Not just against Mike, but against her too. Breach of fiduciary duty. She was a co-trustee. And when she stood by while her husband forged my name and processed an illegal sale, she became liable. She called me 2 days after the suit was filed. I let it go to voicemail. "Dad, please. I was stupid. I didn't know what he was really doing. I should have stopped it. I see that now. Please don't take this to court. Think about Alexa." I thought about Alexa every day. Which is why I had already revised the trust. Everything, the cabin, my house, my savings, would now skip directly to her. Rebecca and Mike. Disinherited. I wasn't just reclaiming the cabin. I was protecting the one person left in that family who had not betrayed me. And they never saw it coming. The first court date was set for early April. Craig said it would take months, motions, responses, hearings, delays. Mike had hired a corporate defense lawyer from Minneapolis who dressed like he was headed to the Oscars and spoke in dismissive, passive-aggressive blurts about asset misinterpretation and family miscommunication. Craig called him a walking avocado with a law degree. I called him an expensive mistake. But before the opening hearing, I had one more thing to do. It was Saturday morning. Cold but clear. I waited in the parking lot outside Alexa's gymnastics center, sipping coffee from a paper cup and watching parents pile in and out with SUV doors swinging wide. Rebecca wasn't expecting me. I hadn't spoken to her in over a month. But I'd asked the court for one thing in my trust revision: scheduled time with my granddaughter. It wasn't custody. It wasn't visitation rights. It was something more fragile. Hope. I saw her before she saw me, Alexa, 9 years old, carrying a duffel bag bigger than her back, bouncing on her heels with hair tied in 2 uneven braids. When she turned and spotted me, her eyes lit up like Christmas. "Grandpa," she shouted, running across the lot. I knelt as she leapt into my arms. She still smelled like vanilla shampoo and cotton fabric softener. Still wrapped her arms around my neck like she never wanted to let go. "Are you here to watch me flip?" she asked, breathless. I wouldn't miss it for the world. We sat together on the bleachers. She gave me a full commentary on every routine: which girl was nice, which coach was too serious, which chalk bucket smelled weird. When her turn came, she looked back at me and gave a little thumbs up. I nodded. She flipped. She ran. She landed. Imperfectly, but proudly. Afterward, we sat on a park bench under a line of bare trees while she devoured a cherry slush. "Mom says you're mad at them," she said finally, not looking at me. "I'm disappointed," I corrected. "That's different." She poked the straw in her cup. "They say you're confused. That you forgot things. But you don't look confused. I looked at her. Do you think I am? She shook her head. No. You remember everything I tell you. I smiled. I try. She looked up at me. Are we still okay? It hit me then, how much she understood. How much she feared being caught in the crossfire. I put my hand on her shoulder. You and me. We're forever okay. She leaned into me. I like the cabin. You said it has loons. It does. And a canoe. And a porch swing that creaks like it's telling ghost stories. Can we go there sometime? Just us. I swallowed. We will. Someday soon. It's yours, you know. She looked confused. Mine. I nodded. All of it. That night, I pulled the manila envelope from my desk, the one Craig had prepped. Inside were the revised trust documents, notarized and airtight. The cabin. The house. The bank accounts. The land I bought in 2006 for hunting but never used. All of it, transferred in conditional trust to Alexa. It would mature when she turned 25. Until then, it was protected by Craig's firm, managed by a fiduciary, and sealed tight. Rebecca would get nothing. Mike would get less than nothing. They tried to forge my name. I signed theirs out of my legacy. And when I stood in court 3 weeks later, I didn't wear a scowl or bring anger with me. I brought a picture. Alexa, age 9, flipping in midair, suspended, brave, free. Hope. Courtroom 4 smelled like wood polish and paper. The ceiling fans creaked. The judge's bench loomed. And sitting across from me at the respondent table were Mike and Rebecca, looking like they had aged 10 years in 30 days. Mike's tan was gone, his jaw tight, his posture stiff. Rebecca wore a black suit 2 sizes too big, as if she had borrowed it for a funeral, maybe the burial of her credibility. I sat next to Craig, calm, focused, wearing the same brown blazer Marie always called my Sunday best. In front of me was a neat folder of exhibits, the trust papers, the forensic analysis, the notarization clause highlighted in yellow. The judge, a gray-haired woman named Justice Tolan, adjusted her glasses and looked over the docket. Petitioner, Mark Grayson. Respondents, Rebecca Vaughn and Michael Vaughn. Motion to void fraudulent trust transaction, claim of forgery, breach of fiduciary duty, and request for permanent removal of both respondents from all trust authority. Is that correct? Correct, Your Honor, Craig said. She turned to the defense table. Mr. Vaughn, Mrs. Vaughn, are you representing yourselves today? Rebecca hesitated. Mike opened his mouth. But the lawyer next to them, the one with the tailored pinstripes, stood up and said, We're withdrawing representation, Your Honor. My clients have failed to disclose material facts. I've submitted a motion for release this morning. Justice Tolan blinked. Motion granted. Mike looked like someone had just kicked the legs out from under his chair. He leaned toward Rebecca, whispered something. She shook her head. The judge looked at them again. You may proceed without counsel, or request a continuance. Mike stood up. Your Honor, this is all a misunderstanding. There was no intent to defraud. My father-in-law gave us verbal approval. Craig stood. Objection. Statement is factually false and directly contradicted by forensic and notarized evidence already submitted. Justice Tolan raised a hand. Mr. Vaughn. Sit down. Mike opened his mouth again. I said sit, she repeated, sharper now. He obeyed. Craig stepped forward. In 2004, Mr. Grayson created a legally binding irrevocable trust, with himself and his daughter as co-trustees. That trust included a notarization clause for any real estate transactions. The cabin in question is covered under that trust. There was no such notarization. Furthermore, the signature on the property sale document has been confirmed, by 2 independent experts, to be a forgery. He handed up a packet. The judge flipped through it slowly, nodding. Craig continued. My client has spent over $40,000 covering his daughter and son-in-law's financial failures. He has been generous, patient, and deliberate. And in return, they attempted to strip him of the last thing he built with his late wife. He turned toward Mike and Rebecca. This wasn't a clerical error. It was a betrayal, with a price tag. Rebecca finally stood. Her voice was soft, unsteady. Your Honor. I made a mistake. I didn't know what Mike was doing. I thought he had the authority. I didn't read the clause. Justice Tolan fixed her with a stare. You're a licensed attorney, Mrs. Vaughn. You had fiduciary duty. And you knowingly submitted documents without proper notarization. Rebecca looked down at her shoes. The judge picked up her gavel. This court finds in favor of the petitioner. The transfer is voided. The respondents are permanently removed from all trust authority. The petitioner's legal fees shall be covered in full by the respondents. She paused. And a separate copy of this ruling will be forwarded to the county prosecutor's office, for review of criminal charges, including forgery and attempted fraud. The gavel dropped. Mike slumped. Rebecca's face went pale. Craig packed his briefcase with mechanical precision, nodded at me, and said, "Let's go get your cabin back." The fallout was swift. Mike was arrested 3 weeks later, charged with 1 count of felony forgery and 1 count of attempted fraudulent transaction of a trust asset. He posted bail, but not before the story hit the local paper. Attorney couple accused of forging father's signature to sell family cabin. Rebecca's law license was suspended pending ethics review. She quietly resigned from her firm 2 days after the article ran. They listed their home within the month. Mike's business contacts dried up like spilled wine on asphalt. No one wanted to work with a man facing prison. Rebecca's name disappeared from the PTA rosters. Even their friends stopped returning calls. And as for me, I drove back to Stillwater Lake. I changed the locks again, myself this time. Refinished the deck. Oiled the porch swing. Alexa came to visit that summer. We caught fireflies, fished off the dock, roasted marshmallows by the fire. One night, while we were staring at the stars, she leaned over and said, "I'm glad you didn't give it to them." I looked down at her and smiled. I never built it for them. The lake was quiet again. The kind of quiet that only comes after a storm, not just the weather kind, but the life kind. You could hear it in the stillness of the water, in the way the pine trees swayed gently like they were whispering, "You did it. It's over." I sat on the porch swing, mug of coffee in hand, legs wrapped in the old wool blanket Marie used to love. The boards beneath my feet were warm with afternoon sun. The wind carried the scent of cedar and distant campfire smoke. Inside, Alexa was asleep on the couch, curled up with a book and one of Marie's quilts. She had asked to stay just one more night, and I had said yes, because that's what this place was for. Not power. Not profit. Just peace. The cabin had never felt more mine. Not because I had one, but because I had remembered why I built it. I looked out over the water, watching a single loon float silently toward the far shore. I exhaled. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't thinking about courtrooms or signatures or disappointment. I was just, here. Still. Whole. And finally, at peace.
Hello everyone, and thank you for watching. I truly hope you enjoyed listening to the story as much as I enjoyed creating it. If you did, please consider liking the video and subscribing to the channel to help support the creation of more stories like this. Have a great day or evening.